Thanks, Bliss. Yes, we're here with Martha Mooke, electroacoustic violist, composer, producer of multi-genre events, clinician, educator. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And you're in town this week to perform with the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia. Tonight you're performing in a program about improvisation at the Annenberg Center.
Yes. Yeah, this week is definitely has the improvisational theme running through it.
And then on April 1st and 2nd, the Chamber Orchestra is performing the world premiere of your new piece, Invisible Hands.
Yes, they are.
And you are the soloist.
I am.
Well, we're delighted to have you here. Thank you so much.
My great pleasure.
Now, before we start the music, could you describe your instrument? Because you have here a very beautiful-looking electric viola.
Yes, so as for people that are watching on the live stream, it's made by Yamaha, and it's a pretty new model. It's very sexy looking in a way, lots of curves and sort of cut away. I like to say I couldn't afford the whole thing, so you can see through it. And this has 5 strings, so it's actually a combination of a violin and viola, or viola and violin. This is a little bit of a specially made model for me. They made it a little bit longer for the viola length.
And in addition to the viola, which really does look like a work of art, I've heard you say that all of the electronic equipment that you have at your feet, you consider part of your instrument.
Exactly, because ultimately where the sound comes out, everything in between makes that what it sounds like. And years ago when I first started out, I had a lot of people that said, they didn't like the sound of electric violins or electric strings because it was terrible. And I said, I agree with you. That's why it's very important to put in quality pieces of gear in between and know what you're doing with it, because it's all one instrument, all becomes the instrument.
And I've heard you say, I love this, that you have the soul of a violist.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It has to do with everybody resonates at certain different frequencies, and you find your instrument that way. Singers, players of orchestral, different instruments. I actually started out on viola, and when the string teacher wanted me to change to violin because I was progressing pretty rapidly, and I took it home to try over the weekend, and I brought it back, and I said, nope, it doesn't resonate with me. I want to play the viola.
Well, today you're sampling your works for us. Mm-hmm. What will you start out with?
So something I like to do in whatever space I'm in is a little bit of an offering for the space, and it's an improvisation, and just to sort of tune up the room and tune myself and everybody around it. So this will be an improv for WRTI. Never played before, never played again.
Thank you. What are you doing when you improvise from scratch like that? You're playing something else, playing a pre-recorded?
Everything
piece?
is done live. There's nothing pre-recorded, nothing up my sleeves.
So you start playing, and then that bass line
Yeah.
or whatever continues.
So what I have at my feet are a couple of foot pedals that are multi-effects pedals, digital delays and pitch and things. They change the sound of the instrument. And I also have a looper pedal, and that's what gives me the repeats. And if I start a phrase and I record it, and it just keeps repeating, I can make layers on top of that. I have control over volume. I'm a control freak. I have control over everything.
And are you what determines what you play?
The moment, that's what improvisation is about. It's all about, I start with a sound, so I had a certain effect that I knew I was going to start with, a little reverby, a little bit of a delay. And then again, I start playing, and I see if I want to play something a little more somber, a little more light. I like to add a little bit of rhythm, just to, again, to see how the space sounds.
And you were classically trained as a violist.
Yes.
What was the turning point when you decided you wanted to expand your musical palette?
Yeah, there was a definite moment when I was in high school and somebody lent me a recording of Jean-Luc Ponty, a wonderful jazz electroacoustic violinist. And when I heard this recording, it blew my mind. And on the cover, he's cradling this beautiful blue 5-string electric violin. And within the year, I had my parents drive me down lived in Staten Island, New York City. They drove me down to 48th Street to Manny's, which no longer exists, and I bought that very same 5-string violin. And just started experimenting with different pedals and sounds, and they didn't have what I'm using here back in those days, but a lot of trial and error.
So it really you're still playing the viola, it's just opened up all the musical possibilities with different sounds.
It's unlimited, really. And when I first started, I asked different people I knew that were plugging in or playing electric, and everybody I asked said something totally different. So I basically just had to keep trying different pieces of equipment until I found my sound, my voice.
So what will we hear now?
So I'm going to play a little bit of this was a big multimedia piece I did a number of years ago called Dreaming in Sound. And you think I have pedals here today. I had several more pedals. I had speakers up in the sky, and I was setting loops up there, and they were moving all over. And it's an hour-long piece, but I'll just play a couple of minutes of it because there's a lot of different sounds that I like.
Great. If you're just joining us, that was Martha Mooke playing live in the WRTI Performance Studio. She was playing a selection from her latest CD, No Ordinary Window. This whole concept of a window, is the window music?
So, yeah, window is a lot of different things. I consider it window to the world, window of opportunity, window to the soul. So it's a portal, basically. Yeah.
So as a composer, I understand your composition process varies depending on the piece, the circumstance, the inspiration. So this was?
Well, what I just played was Dreaming in Sound. That's not yet on a recording.
Oh,
but No Ordinary
sorry.
Window is the latest. I'll play a little bit of that, so you get the idea. But it's along those same lines. But I do, for me, the live experience is really what matters. When you go out to listen to music, you are never, even if you're going to hear a Mozart symphony, you'll never hear it exactly the same way twice. And what I believe in my performance and improvisation takes it a step further. When you go out to a hall, and it's every time you're going to be sitting next to a different person. The temperature is going to be different. You will have had something different to eat beforehand. Maybe you'll have a headache. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you had a fight with your spouse, or maybe you're feeling great. And you're going to experience the music differently every single time. And I think the audience doesn't always get that it's a really unique experience to go out and hear live music. So that's part of what the window is. And even that I put out CDs, I still encourage people to come and hear the live performance, because I guarantee you will never play the same thing twice in a performance. Even if it's written out, I get a vibe from the audience. I sense if they're into it. I take them with me on the travels, and they don't even know they're part of the performance.
I was looking at one of your videos online, and there were some beautiful colors going on in the background. And your music seemed to go so well with that movement of color. Do you think visually when you're playing?
Not necessarily. I'm inspired by all the different sounds, and that really, it's like being in the kitchen and you grab different ingredients. Depends how much salt or how much sugar or how much spice you put in. And in each time you can bake the same cake, but it'll come out a little bit different every single time because of the different elements. So I'll start out like this piece, which is from An Ordinary Window. In fact, I call it Window Opportunity. I tried a different, was experimenting with settings, and I found this, that when I play one note, I get this whole series of different harmonies diving up and down. And so I created this piece that is based on that. Wow, it really puts you in a different space Yes.
in your head.
And I purposely didn't end it. It just keeps going until your imagination stops hearing it.
It reminds me of listening to music in a cavernous cathedral or
Mhm.
a canyon where you hear echoes and reverberation.
Yeah, well, that's part of what these pedals do. They can put me in, in the Grand Canyon, or they can put me in a little studio. They can make me into 15 different players.
So your new work, which will have its world premiere with the chamber orchestra, April 1st and 2nd, is
Yes.
called Invisible Hands. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired this work?
Yeah. Well, just the opportunity to play with the orchestra, and the idea of the piece is actually I created two pieces. The orchestra will play it first, just acoustically, and then they'll play it again with me as the soloist, adding all my electronics and my different improvisational elements to it. So the audience gets to experience it on multi-levels, and which is very unusual for a new piece of music. Usually audiences hear it once, so they don't really get to process it. So a little more familiarity and a little different context. They'll hopefully appreciate it in a different way.
Does that mirror your composition process? You composed one part first and then...
No, I've started doing this when I'm playing with a larger ensemble. And again, it's part of, because usually an orchestra doesn't improvise, so I give incredible kudos to the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia for doing this series, because it's pretty daring. A lot of classically trained musicians are afraid of improvising. They're trained to play exactly what's on the page. And so this is an opportunity for them to experiment and open up. I told them at the rehearsal today, in my piece, there's no wrong notes. This is an opportunity to express yourself that you usually don't get that chance to in an orchestral setting. And the title itself, Invisible Hands, comes from, I'm very inspired by the writings of Joseph Campbell. And he has this series of conversations with Bill Moyers called The Power of Myth. And I guess I'm inspired by myth and creating that different universe, another dimension of sound.
And the invisible hands are?
Invisible hands, when you least expect it, they're there. Again, in this work, sometimes they're there when you least expect it. Sometimes you didn't realize you're hearing something else and you don't quite know what it is, but they're helping. Invisible hands are helping everybody, the players, the audience, the conductor, myself. I'm counting on a lot of invisible hands for this performance.
Okay. Well, we are in the WRTI Performance Studio listening to Martha Mooke perform a little bit from Invisible Hands.
Yeah, so I just give a little bit of a demonstration. There's a lot of elements to the piece. And one of the improvisational element in the piece for the orchestra will come at this time, where I will let me just set up a little pedal advance here and touch this button. So So this will happen at a certain point, and I will actually be interacting with the musicians. And again, it will sound very different. And we'll see. I think it's going to be a magical moment in the piece.
It's very exciting. I mean, you have had such an interesting career working with artists, classical artists, Orchestra St. Luke's, David Bowie, Barbra Streisand, all of these different artists who are ostensibly in different genres, but you've brought them together also in concerts. The role of genre is kind of open to question right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had an issue with genre because I don't like it. I play all kinds of music, and for me, it's all legitimate. So you go to a museum, you don't necessarily like every piece of art in the museum. They like to put things into genres as well, I guess. But for me, it's about hearing it and being moved by it. It's not just listening with your ears. I like to tell people when I do smaller settings, listen with your arm and your legs, and listen to your experience, listen to your history. I love when people tell me after that it reminded them of some childhood experience or some other feeling or emotion. To me, that's when I know that this language, this communication is really back and forth.
When music really can touch people
Yes.
and move them.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much. We are about to turn our on-air programming back to Bliss, but I want to remind everyone that you'll be performing tonight with the Chamber Orchestra at the Annenberg Center in a program about improvisation hosted by Andrew Lipke, and your brand new work, Invisible Hands, will be premiered next Sunday and Monday, April 1st and 2nd, and that will be at the Kimmel Center.
Yes.
So we look forward to all of those. If you are following us on Facebook right now, stay with us because we are continuing our conversation and music with Martha Mooke. But right now we will hand over our audio feed to Bliss Mickelson. Back to you, Bliss.
Follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss.
Well,
Or stay with
thanks,
us.
Susan. Thank you, Martha. Fascinating. I was really enjoying that.
We'll continue now with our
Great.
Facebook feed.
I'll put some other things in order. Yeah, great.
Great.
So people are still
People, we are
hopefully
still
there.
we are still filming for Facebook. Yes, thanks for staying with us. You have some other things to play for us.
Yes. So I'm going to play one of my classic pieces. That's called Rain Dance. It's off of my first CD, An Harmonic Vision. And by the way, those of you that are on Facebook, I am also on Facebook. Come find my artist page. I've got videos, and pop me a note and let me know who you are, and we'll continue that conversation too. So this is Rain Dance.
great. It sounds like a rain dance. And it's fascinating to watch you because you're playing the viola, but you're also playing these pedals and I'm not sure what they're all called.
Yeah, so they're all pedals. Each one does a different thing. I've got a volume control, then I have 2 effects units, and I have another controller that changes the effect within the effect, and the looper, and all that creates the sound. So, you know, it's not so unusual if you think about what a church organist does.
I was thinking that was the image that came to mind.
Right.
In terms of traditional
Right.
instruments.
They're playing both hands, fingers, the toes, feet, heels. And so, you know, it takes a little bit of getting used to, a little bit of choreography involved in it. And did take some coaching from some dance people so I didn't trip over myself. But
well, that's interesting. Yeah. And the arrangement you have here of 5 things, pedals and knobs and boxes, I'm not sure what to call them. Is that what you always use, or do you sometimes have expanded pedals?
Mostly this is what it is. I have had other pedals that do other things, other triggers, like in the piece I talked about, Dreaming in Sound. I had a whole other pedal just to control 4 speakers that did totally different things, and then that was controlling a computer program. So it wasn't just the pedals on the floor, but there was a whole other computer program involved in that as well. And I mean, you can get as complex, which makes people's eyes spin when they're like, they ask me, how do I start doing this? I don't tell them, well, you can do all of this. I tell them the first thing you can do is you can plug this instrument into that amp, and then you get sound. And then you can find one pedal, which may do one thing, and put that in between and keep exploring. That's how I did it.
And then how do you notate it when you're composing something?
Very carefully. I call it retro notating. I create the piece, I sort of sketch it out, write down what the effects are, and then if I'm playing it for myself, I may not fully notate it. I may just write like a melodic line and write what the effect is. If it's for an orchestra or a concert band, which I've written for, the solo line actually has 2 separate lines sometimes because the viola becomes a transposing instrument. So sometimes, you know, I play one note, but you're actually hearing a whole series of notes. And sometimes they're even more complex. They create totally different rhythms. So I actually have to notate what for example, what the conductor's going to hear when I play one note. And or No Ordinary Window, I played one note and a whole series of harmonies emerged out of it. So there's different ways. I have to be sort of creative and often create a page of performance notes to explain these things.
So you started out with the viola in a very traditional way, knowing what sounds the viola traditionally made and the repertoire the viola traditionally had.
Right, which I still play.
Yes.
I still play in orchestras and do traditional things, string quartets.
And then with all of these other electronic devices and equipment, you've expanded it, and extended techniques just means that you're making the viola do things that it has not ordinarily
Yeah,
done.
well, okay, so in the rehearsal today with the orchestra, I was demonstrating some techniques for them that I'm asking them to do, which they don't usually do. And one is called the hammer technique. And that's basically the viola becomes a percussion instrument, so I'm having them do. And that click is very important. That's what the driving force is there. And then I had to explain to them another technique, which is actually where you don't want to have any pitch at all. And these are foreign concepts to, why don't you want to make a pitch? But it becomes, this is becoming a different instrument and thinking in more broad terms. And then I have other things that I demonstrated before. And when you add the electronics, it takes that to another level, because sometimes the harmonics, like this, is one thing, but when I do this, it becomes something else. Same thing, if the players are playing one note, even if they're doing this, which they need to do, when I turn this on and I play
Great.
So that's all going to be part of this piece.
So you have one more piece. You ready to play for us?
Yeah. So I'll play, again, as an improviser and as the composer, I can sort of change things on the fly. But I'll play a little bit of a piece that it's a piece I co-wrote with Randy Hudson, who's a guitar player. We have a duo that's called Boeing. It's called Boeing because sometimes he uses an E-bow on the guitar, and sometimes he sounds more like a bowed string instrument, and then if I kick on some distortion, I sound more like Jimi Hendrix on guitar. So we love, on the recording, our recording Cafe Mars, sometimes you don't know who's playing what part, and the long melodic lines could be Randy playing, and I'm playing the crazy guitar solo. So just to give you an idea, so I figured actually we do this as a duo, but I realized one time during a performance when something happened with his rig and couldn't hear his sound, because I have the loops, I can actually play the piece on my own. It's of course very different, doesn't have his sounds, so I just started because I love the piece so much. So I actually start off as a bass player. I'll tell people to imagine it's Cafe Mars, so they're in some strange bar, Mars 4 a.m. or whatever, Mars time, and it's kind of a smoky greenish tint, and there's all kinds of strange sounds a la Star Wars. Anything goes.
Cafe Mars. Martha Mooke playing Cafe Mars. That's great. And I know you say the music defies categorization, but it seems to be very much in the spirit of jazz. And I was thinking April is Jazz Appreciation Month. We appreciate jazz every month of the year. But it does seem, do you feel yourself part of a legacy of all music, or particularly influenced by jazz or some classical composer? Or
I'm influenced by all music, and I tell you, I play a little bit of jazz, but I don't call myself a jazz player. That's a very people study that for a long time, and they allow me occasionally to go in there and do my thing. I'm an improviser. There's a lot of different definitions of improviser. And so I can improvise in many different styles. I don't claim to be a expert in every single style. But what I am is able to express my soul. And I go with it that way. And so if it sounds like I'm playing strange notes, or I'm not in any particular key, or I'm creating new kinds of sounds, that's because I've given myself permission and the freedom to do that, and it allows me to find this voice inside of me that it gives me an outlet for expression. And that's where, whenever I do workshops and clinics and I have an audience and I talk to them about that, it's about the players being able to experience playing and creating in another way, in another voice, and connecting with the audience to listen in other ways as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming into the WRTI Performance Studio,
pleasure.
sharing your music, sharing your thoughts. It's pretty exciting.
Thank you.
And good luck with your performances tonight at the Annenberg Center with the Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia, and next weekend, April 1st and 2nd, with the premiere of your brand new piece, Invisible Hands.
Thank you so much. Been a joy to be here.
Thank you, Martha Mooke.